It was one of Donald Trump's biggest campaign promises in 2016.
I am pro-life, and I will be appointing pro-life judges.
And it's a promise he's kept since taking office, appointing conservative justices Neil Gorsuch and the deeply controversial Brett Kavanaugh, who are both expected to vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, the decision that legalized abortion if the issue comes before the court. But the emphasis on the abortion issue and the Republican Party's focus on elevating conservatives to the court started decades earlier.
With great pleasure and deep respect for his extraordinary abilities, that I today announce my intention to nominate United States Court of Appeals Judge Robert H. Bork to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court.
Robert Bork's America is a land in which women would be forced into back alley abortions, blacks would sit at segregated lunch counters, rogue police could break down citizens' doors.
A new Frontline documentary, Supreme Revenge, follows the path from the Bork nomination, ultimately shut down by Senate Democrats, through Clarence Thomas, to Republicans blocking Obama's pick Merrick Garland, leading all the way up to today's challenges to Roe in states like Alabama and Ohio, with Senator Mitch McConnell calling the shots and establishing a prevailing view on the court, which former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer recently wrote, quote, can only cause one to wonder which cases the court will overturn next. The film's director and producer, Michael Kirk, joins me now. Michael, it's great to see you, as always.
You too.
So here's one of my main takeaways from the film. If you want to understand why Merrick Garland is not on the court and why Brett Kavanaugh is on the court, you have to understand what happened to Robert Bork. Am I on to something?
You got to go back 3 decades
so
and
go
watch
back.
one of the great moments. So this is, if there is a sort of origin moment in where we are today, including the divisions that are in our society, it is back at that moment when the Democrats decide, led by Ted Kennedy, decide that they're not going to let Ronald Reagan have his last nominee. He's running out of time. He hasn't really done that much to change America the way he wanted to. His choice of Robert Bork, ultra-conservative, well-known for his writings and for his opinions, it comes up before the Congress, before the Senate, and Kennedy decides an hour after Bork is nominated by Reagan to put down the gauntlet, light the match, whatever you want to say, that starts the battle that ends up in Kavanaugh.
And he was borked, as you said. A verb came into creation as a result of this. And there was also, which I was not aware of until I saw your film, there was a young freshman member of Congress who was sitting there deeply troubled by what went on. That was who again?
Well, that's young first-termer Mitch McConnell, dark-haired, thin, straight out of Kentucky, standing there watching it happen.
And saying Democrats would rue the day that they brought this guy down. You know, the fall of Bork also gave rise, another thing I didn't know until I saw your film, to an organization that is as center stage in America as any, the organization that provided the names of 20-plus potential Supreme Court nominees, that was embraced by Citizen Trump, from which President Trump picked his nominees. The Federalist Society came into creation. What was it then?
When Bork is borked, he had been the advisor, the faculty advisor at Yale Law School to a group of conservative students who were unhappy with the fact that they didn't really have any affinity with the largely progressive students at the law school. The same was true for a group of students run by Anton Scalia at the University of Chicago and at Harvard. So there are 3 schools, handful of conservatives at each school. In 1982, they start to get together. By 87, when Bork has been borked, they all get together and decide, all right, this is it. The Olin Foundation and some other what are known as dark money organizations put some money into them. The thing begins to grow on campuses and finally in law schools. It becomes a kind of proving ground for future judges, and it's also a job fair, a job market kind of a place. And we all know where they are today.
So 4 years after Bork does not make it, George H.W. nominates Clarence Thomas.
Right.
And it's pretty clear that the GOP learned a lot of lessons from the Bork failure, correct?
They learned not to be borked, so they teach Clarence Thomas not to answer any questions. That goes all the way up to Kavanaugh. You'll see that happen. And Thomas says things like, it's a hypothetical, I'm not going to answer it. And if you watch the Kavanaugh hearings as we do in the film tonight, you'll see Kavanaugh saying virtually the same words.
I want to get to that in a minute. The thing that I totally forgot, we've spoken a lot on the show recently, as has much of America, about Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Joe Biden's position on allowing potentially corroborating witnesses not to appear, corroborating of Anita Hill's story. We didn't focus on a couple of things that just were jaw-dropping, and I had forgotten. When he's chair of the committee, he greets Clarence Thomas in the most jocular kind of way, sort of joking back and forth. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he says, character is not an issue. And it appears it's like one of those things, who said character was an issue?
That's right.
And the legendary Nina Totenberg from NPR is paying close attention, yes?
Nina hears him say it, and she thinks, what? Who raised character? So as Nina says in the film, she goes out and kicks some tires and comes back after a weekend part of a weekend of researching with the name Anita Hill, a professor from a law school in Oklahoma who is making the allegations.
Okay, so fast forward or not, well, it is fast forward. Merrick Garland and Mitch McConnell has an opportunity, obviously no hearing, no nothing, to put into force his remarks. Democrats will rue the day. They rued the day. Obviously nothing happened there. Then Gorsuch is nominated to replace Antonin Scalia. Not that big a deal, conservative for conservative, but a huge deal when the critical swing vote, Anthony Kennedy steps down and Brett Kavanaugh is nominated to replace him. And you touched on this a minute ago. To say that Kavanaugh and his defenders learned from Clarence Thomas is an understatement. Here's probably the most famous line out of Clarence Thomas's mouth at the confirmation hearings, and then maybe the most famous line, or one of them at least, out of Brett Kavanaugh's.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump, revenge on behalf of the Clintons.
It is amazing when you watch this how similar those moments are, is it not?
And Anita Hill and Dr.
Christine
Ford. I mean, here we are again, character, ideology, and now something really new, which is that what Kavanaugh is saying there is, hey, this is political combat. I am a combatant in this political war, and I'm taking the side of the Republicans. He does that to move it away, the argument away from Dr. Ford and over to a Republican-Democrat battle, the battle we're all seeing everywhere else in our society. And at that hearing, he knows it's the only way he's going to survive.
You know, one last thing. I think it's fair to say that the epic level of viciousness in regular, everyday American politics can probably be laid at the feet of Donald Trump. That's not in your film. But what is in your film is a parallel, at least to me, is one learns that the viciousness of the nomination and confirmation process long precedes Donald Trump, which leads me to conclude, after having watched your film, it will be around long after Donald Trump. There's no reason to doubt the latter, unfortunately, is there?
The politics of destruction have begun and culminated maybe in this. The thing that's really changed is we used to, when you and I were children, we believed this, maybe, well, certainly I did, I believed that the Supreme Court was this neutral kind of crucible where people went and things, even if you were a Republican or a Democrat, you were Earl Warren, the Republican governor of California, you were going to decide something special inside that room and you were free of politics. There is almost no way, lots of people tell us who are in this film, to watch Brett Kavanaugh answer those questions, or even Clarence Thomas answer those questions, and not say you know what political side they're on, and how many decisions will be adjudicated now. And that is a substantial change in our era that's not necessarily laid at Donald Trump's feet, but it is laid, as Frank Luntz in our film says, on the hands of Democrats and Republicans who fought this fight all the way down to where we are now.
With no sign of ending. Michael Kirk, as always, brilliant film.
My
Terrific.
pleasure.
Can't wait. Thank you so much. Tonight, Frontline Supreme Revenge airs at 10 right here on GBH2. For more information, head to pbs.org/frontline.